Morning. Hello. Each morning we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, and to give back. Good morning, everyone. We bid you welcome. We do not ask what you believe or expect you to think a certain way, but only that you try to live a kindly, helpful life with the dignity proper to a human being. Welcome all who believe that religion is wider than any sect and deeper than any set of opinions. Welcome all who might find in our friendship strength and encouragement for daily living. Good morning and welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is Mark Petrie and I am chair of the fundraising committee. This morning we are fortunate to have a guest speaker, Jeynce Poindexter, with us. I will tell you a little bit more about Jeynce later. And we welcome Gail Gebhardt as our musician today. Hello, Gail. While our music director, Diana Munch, has a rare Sunday off. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors today. After the service, we invite you to stay for a coffee hour downstairs in Adams Hall. Today, we also have a special Q&A session with Jeynce after the service. When in the meeting house, we are observing COVID precautions and wearing masks regardless of vaccination status. Religious education classes are being held in the RE classrooms during the service. An usher can direct you to those locations if needed. Joys and sorrows can be shared later in the service after the offering. You are welcome to come up to the microphone. And I also have a different cell phone for you to text. So I'm going to give that to you later in the service when we do joys and sorrows. So just to give you a little heads up there to be ready. We also have blue joys and sorrows cards in the pews that can be filled out and given to the ushers during the offering and read by me later in the service. If you would like to, yeah, we did that. Okay, text. We'll move on to our shared affirmation of our mission. Please join me in stating our mission in the order of service. We seek answers everywhere, include everyone, and live with compassion. And I understand we have some announcements. Feel free to come on up. Thank you.
People had to sit in the back. It's me again with the letter writing campaign. This week we have 2 evenings that you can come support us, Thursday night at 7 o'clock or Sunday night at 7 o'clock. Please do come. It's easy, it's fun. You really only have to write your name twice in a very short sentence, and it is very effective in getting the vote out. So please join us. We also have Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Oh, I'm sorry.
Wednesday at 1 o'clock. I am Katie, the RE chair. I am here again with Treats on the Trail signups. If you were not here last week, we are doing our annual trick-or-treat on the trail around the church, October 30th after service. Everyone did such a great job signing up last week that all of our trail spots are taken. Yay! However, we only have one person signed up for a booth spot in the parking lot. So we would love if we could get at least 7 more booth spots in the parking lot. We'll have tables set up. You just have to stand at your table. You can decorate your table. For example, last year, Barb did angel card readings, and she had her table decorated. We did a Nightmare Before Christmas one. Also, if you don't want to decorate, we will have decorations for you. If you want to bring treats, our friends on the membership committee are collecting them in a bucket by the front door. You can check that here. If you just have spare decor, you can also help us with our decorations. I'm going to send this around. If you have signed up, obviously these are blank. We still have your name written down somewhere, so you do not need to sign up twice. Thank you.
And just to wrap up Halloween type stuff, we are doing this afternoon, a deal with the other faith-based institutions in Farmington Hills. It's they call it Trunk or Treat. It's going to be at the Costic Center in Farmington on 11 Mile Road. It's being coordinated by the Farmington Hills Police Department. We're going to have fun. We're also a little short-staffed, so if anybody can spare some time between 3 and 6 and help us out, it would be great. Let me know after the service. Thanks.
You'll also get to see the great poster that my kids made for Tom's trunk. It's going to be fun. Thank you, Tom. And please check the UUCF website or emails for other announcements about upcoming events. All right. At this time, it is my pleasure to announce our speaker today. Jeynce Poindexter is a case manager with the Ruth Ellis Center, who also manages part of the housing department called the Kelly Stowe Project. Is that correct? Stowe? I should have checked beforehand, sorry. She is the vice president of Trans Sisters of Color Project, an agency started 11 years ago in the city of Detroit due to the discrimination, murder, and harm of trans women of color, particularly black trans women in and around the Detroit metropolitan area. Please welcome Jeynce. Thank you.
Good morning, you all. First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much for welcoming me into your home, into your space. I really, really, really appreciate it. I come in love. I come in the spirit of sharing, and also really, truthfully, honestly, just being able to be in God's house. You know, after so many years of having to be apart and stuff, it just feels good to be able to come back in the congregation and fellowship and see people. But particularly for this leverage of conversation that we're about to have, I always value these type of conversations in these spaces because no matter throughout the path of my life, the Lord has always been so good to me. He has been literally the base, the foundation, and the root of my life. And no matter what I went through, no matter what I experienced, even some mess that I probably got myself in, he still was there. He still was faithful. He still was good. And so when I got the invitation and the opportunity to come here and share space with you all, it was an immediate yes. And I want to take the time out to thank Miss Jessica so much, because we've been coordinating over the last couple months, and she was very adamant about inviting me and having me in the space as well. So God is good. We give him the honor and the glory. We welcome him into this place, and we allow him to have space in this place that we've set before him. Thank you, Lord. My name is Jeynce Poindexter, and as Mark said, I am the case manager with the Ruth Ellis Center, and I also manage part of the housing department called the Kelly Stowe Project, and we render housing services to LGBTQ community members that are experiencing or that are thriving and living through human trafficking situations. That particular program is one of my labors of love. I say that because Kelly actually was my friend. She was murdered in the city of Detroit back in 2000, right at the end of 2018, going into 2019, actually at the hands of a pastor. And so, as you can imagine, just hearing it, the shock value and the impact at first, but then understanding the intricate nuances and the details. And so we immediately kicked into action, and I say we, speaking in concern of Trans Sisters of Color Project. So I'm the vice president of that agency, and it did start, like Mark said, over 11 years ago in the city of Detroit because of the murder, harm, and violence against trans women of color, particularly black trans women. And so it was our response to not having space in this world and making sure that when things happen, that we were the captains of response, and also that we were the experts on how to help us and how to end our traumas and the violence that was taken out against us. And so we're very proud of the agency because the agency is fully ran and facilitated on a day-to-day basis by all trans women of color at every level, from the executive director to me, the vice president, to the director of outreach. So many different nuances and facets, and we're proud of that because you don't see that very often. I know a lot of people think, particularly with the LGBTQ community, that it is all love. And I'll tell you, internally, still, trans women of color and black trans women are always left out of the fold in the sense of who cares. And who really makes sure that there is space curated and created for us. And it's always very funny for me because as Pride season comes, it's boasted as this celebration and this time to get together and be joyous and have fun, and it is that. But I want to be very clear that the onspring of what we now know as Pride started off as resistance. It started off as resistance, and it goes back to something called the Stonewall, where the community members, they were being profiled. Black and brown people were being harassed and beat and severely injured and just dropped off in the middle of nowhere. Just walked up to a couple people in the village and just hit them with the billy club, just all type of things. That night, that resistance, that pushback specifically came from two trans women of color. One black trans woman, Marsha P. Johnson, and then Sylvia Rivera. And they actually threw the stones, they actually threw the rocks, and actually literally physically started the fight and the riot against the police that have been harassing them for countless years. And so as we celebrate and as we obviously rein in the festivities of it all, we have to be clear that it started back as pushback against racism, against structural racism that was going on in New York City, particularly at the time on Christopher Street around the village. So it was a very targeted, intentional effort where they were being profiled and harassed. And so that was the beginning of our celebrations. And we do celebrate. Don't get me wrong. I really don't want to stand up here and act as if there isn't life for LGBTQ community members, particularly me as a black trans woman. I have seen and I've been able to walk through so many different things. And I know that in my work, it's not work. My bishop shared with me years ago that I would save people through the services and the resources that I rendered and connected people to, but that I also had a responsibility to show people the love of Christ that lives inside of me, that has transformed and transfigured me. He told me specifically that there are certain people that will hear your voice and the message that you have from God, because a lot of people have been hurt from the church. And so some people won't come in the walls of the church, but they still need to know that they have a place in God. They still need to know that they have value. They still need to know that they have worth and that they have a place in God's kingdom. And I took on that work. And I take it on wholeheartedly because I know that I'm supposed to do it. And I don't know why God chose me. I really seriously don't. I was a mess, but isn't that just like God? You know, and when I look at when I look at the history of God, just knowing that he didn't hang out with the high scribes and the high priest of the day and the important people, so to speak. He hung with the people that he knew needed him most. He hung with the lepers and the prostitutes and the wayward people of the time because he knew that they needed the salvation. He knew that they needed the encouragement and the light of him. And so I apply that even in my work. As far as my commitment and dedication to the work. So even this is not work. This is me showing up and doing what I committed to do. And I do that every day also in the rendering of services through the Ruth Ellis Center, through Trans Sisters of Color Project. Interestingly enough, the Ruth Ellis Center, we just got our 501c3 papers probably last year, the Trans Sisters of Color Project. And the Ruth Ellis Center is a fiduciary of the Trans Sisters of Color Project. And so when I run into situations, particularly for trans women, I'm able, through my case management with Ruth Ellis, if I run into a situation where there's a young lady that needs resources or services, I then can tap into my position in Trans Sisters of Color Project and maximize the reach of resources by acting in those dual positions and those dual responsibilities. And so I do. I make sure that when people reach out to me, that they feel heard. I return phone calls. I answer emails. I also make sure that I am responsible and respectful in how I handle God's people. Because I know that if they made it to me, that it was a reason that they made it to me. They didn't make it to me to share their trauma. They didn't make it to me to tell me their story and then for me to capitalize off of it. They made it to me because there was some reason that the Lord sent them my way to connect, be it for conversation, resources, or even just a moment in time, some level of encouragement. And I take that position very, very seriously, and I stop. And sometimes I even check myself because I don't know everything that the Lord has for me or his plans, and I never will. I can't leverage myself on God's level, but I try to make sure that I'm in the moment, that I'm attentive, and that my spirit is open to hearing the voice of the Lord, that he would guide how I render the services and the connections that I make in order to help the community members go to a different level and a different space in life. Particularly here in Michigan, I've had the opportunity and the honor of working with the governor, of working with the lieutenant governor, the Secretary of State. Particularly in 2019, I helped craft the policy and the legislation that would allow all trans people here in the state of Michigan to go to the Secretary of State, no letters, no bunch of questions, and get their gender marker changed. Because I think that people undervalue the importance of having identification that aligns with who you are. It literally cuts down a lot of harassment and discrimination. Particularly, if you think about it, you have to enter spaces, you have to give your ID. You have to go to get your check cash, you probably have to give your ID. If you want to travel and take up space in different venues, you have to present your ID. And so that was a thought process in my head in what can I do up under my control that would benefit people long after I am nowhere around. And so I was very happy to be a part of crafting that legislation with Secretary of State Benson. We also, last year, we introduced legislation and policy to add the third gender identifier on the state of Michigan IDs for the gender nonconforming and our non-binary community members. And that is, again, to make sure that all Michiganders feel included, that they feel acknowledged and honored in our policies, because that's what it's really about. And I was very glad to hear of the social justice group here within this fellowship. That was really, really like pleasing to my ears, because I think that we get lost in just ourselves. I know I grew up very fortunate, and I had no recollection to the world around me and what was going on for so many years. Really, my mom passed away, and I had to regroup. I had to, just look at life for what it really was worth. And in that, I threw myself in my work. And I started to just do things on my own and make sure that I was being the change that I wanted to see in and throughout my community. And so that led to a lot of the policy work. And I'm happy about the policy work because I think a lot of our broader community and society thinks that we are totally covered and we are fine in the sense of community members, especially after the same marriage ruling back in 2015 or so. A lot of people took for granted that, oh, they're okay, which is totally not true. Marriage is one thing. The Supreme Court came down with a decision about 2 years ago within the employment sector as well, speaking to the rights and the protections of the community. But there were so many realms and so many areas that was left untouched, particularly housing, public accommodation, education, the healthcare field, medical. And so all of these things, we still receive open discrimination and harassment when we have to navigate those entities. And so it has been also one of my life's work, particularly here in the state of Michigan, to amend the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to include sexual orientation and gender identity. That would cut down a lot of the discrimination that you all hear about, see and or witness or are told about, particularly here in the state of Michigan. But a couple weeks ago, there was a Roach decision handed down from the Michigan Supreme Court. And this decision made way for the Elliott Larson Act to be amended here in the state of Michigan. And so I don't know when that's going to happen, but I do know that the Michigan Supreme Court, basically what they said is that you can't slice the pie on protections and rights. And if you're going to protect them within employment, we have to protect them everywhere else. And that was very funny to me because just a little bit of my kind of goofiness. Of course you would protect the money sector first because you want your part. Because no matter how bad you harass me or discriminate against me or tell me where I should go to school, where I should live, what I can't do, you also want your taxes. And so that's what really stuck out to me is that you can think I am the dirt on the floor, but if I have a paycheck, you want your cut. And so basically what the Michigan Supreme Court said is that we can't slice the pie, we have to protect across the board. And so it's a win for us, but also still we are not kind of glassy-eyed, so to speak, in thinking that these decisions will help strengthen and improve every part of our life. We know that that strength, that resistance, that end will only come from us, and that is the truth. Working collectively, also working with allies, also working with family members and friends and supporters. If you think about any of the fights that we've had in this country, no one has done it alone. Not one group, not one sector of people. It has always been a collective that achieves the most positive impact for our communities and our broader society. And so continuing in that energy, in that know-how, everything up under my control, I try to work within that. I try to make sure that I'm responding and that I'm staying connected, but also staying humble. Because I think a lot of people, once you start ascending, you can get away from the root of it all that was the catalyst or the motivation for you getting involved in the first place. And I always ask the Lord to keep me grounded, and to also keep me humbled, because I tell people that I am the statistics. So I am that person who was told that I was worthless, that I was nothing, that I wouldn't amount to much, that I would never go anywhere or do anything. And because of God's grace, not only have I been able to sit at the table in front of these people that the Lord has prepared for me, in the presence of your enemies, but now I also get to show them the justification in God's work and show them exactly how he uses and exactly how he gives us everything that the world would tell us that we're not entitled to and that we should not have. And so it's a real gratifying thing for me when I'm able to enter spaces that historically I was not welcome in, or that I was intentionally blocked out of, because for me, that's where the real work is. Going to the courts when someone is murdered, particularly like Kelly. We went to the court, we connected with her family. I did a documentary on Vice, and this opportunity just came out of nowhere. They were coming here for something totally different. And I just wound up talking to them and really explaining to them the nature of Kelly's death and her murder. And they actually reworked the whole piece. I included her family, so her mother and her grandmother is in the documentary. The documentary is on the Vice network, and I believe, it's trans something. Trans Ballroom, Detroit Resistance Fights Back. It's something like that, so you can pull it up. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact word. But it was really nice to be able to do that because it showed people who probably didn't know the real extent of harassment and discrimination and murder and how it really is still alive and well, and also the impacts of that, and really how it trickles down. You think it's just one person that lost their life, but I am Kelly, and Kelly is me. And the beauty of this particular situation is now that we have the program named after her, all of the hurt and the pain and the trauma that entered us into that situation of her being taken away from us, it is now being combated with goodness and love through the rendering of services through the program that's named after her. And so it is a huge impact to know she's no longer here with us, but she is still here with us, and she's still connecting and still overseeing and providing for people through the program. And so those are the type of life-changing resources and services that I'm able to render, that I'm able to connect community to. And I just don't work with community members because I know that the Lord can send anybody on your path. And what I don't want to ever do is be so focused on this that I miss that. And so for me, as I said earlier, when people connect with me, there's a reason you connected, and I have to see that through. And so I just want to continue to be responsible and be humbled because I know that's my position. And it's also what makes me happy. It gives me great joy for someone to come to me broken and in pieces and probably not having a pathway or even the wherewithal to map out a pathway out of the trauma or the hurt or the pain or the victimization that they're in when they come to me. And so being able to sit with people and console them and then give them clarity and also provide a safety net of support and watch them come into their own as far as figuring out what they really need and what's really going to impact their lives in a positive way. It's a huge thing to see because what you see is the transformation of a person that came to you a little broken, and you see the strength come back. You see the power come back. You see the spirit come back. And for me, that's a joy that I'll never tire of seeing, because I know firsthand the impact of the harm and the discrimination and the harassment that community members face in our world, and particularly here in the state of Michigan. I was also able, years ago, I worked for an agency called Equality Michigan, and I traveled really around the country, but I really travel around the state of Michigan. So I had offices in Traverse City, in Midland, Benton Harbor, and Grand Rapids. And I was able to, when I was in Grand Rapids, I noticed a lot of homelessness. And so particularly within the trans community. So I was able to partner with the Male Trotter Ministries in Grand Rapids over on Commerce, 225 Commerce Avenue. And we opened up and started the first all-trans shelter here in the state of Michigan. And it is still running. I believe it started in 2017, and right now today, even in my new position, I had a young lady that came to me a couple weeks ago, and we were able to Uber her up to Grand Rapids, so she's in services. I was able to connect her to an affirming medical place in Grand Rapids so that she could get gender affirming care, but so she could also get just general health care. I think a lot of people forget, even though you're community members or whomever you are, health care is something that we all need. And so I'm very proud of those things, the couple things that I mentioned to you all, because again, like I said, they'll be around long after I am not. And I see the impact of the resources and the services, and I'm just glad that I could serve in such a way. And it comes with no arrogance. It comes with never me being pompous, but me always being appreciative for the way in which the Lord uses me for other people. I can go on and on talking about different things, but I wanted to get you all the grit so that you fully understand where the community is in the state of Michigan. But I don't want to leave you all in negativity, because I see the hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There is positive things going on to combat all the hate and the things that we experience and that we all know. And so, again, I'm happy to be here as a representative, but I'm also just happy to be able to work for my people, all of my people, all of God's people, in such a way. And so I don't want to bore you with any more details or whatnot, because what I want to do, I wanted to make sure that I created a safe space for you to ask questions. If there's anything that you ever had bumbling in your mind or your spirit, or you just felt like, well, maybe that's a dumb question, I want to open the space at the end with respect to the schedule. I didn't want it to be too off base from what you all are used to, because I'm a guest. I didn't want to come here and take over, but I wanted to come here and fit in the best way possible and be able to connect and share. And so with that being said, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Mark, and then I believe in a couple minutes we'll do the question and answers after the putting out of the chalice. Am I saying that right? Okay, I wanted to try to get it. Look, I wanted to say the name too, but I was sitting over there. I was like, I am not about to embarrass myself on this Sunday morning in such a way. But please, I'm a case manager with the Ruth Ellis Center. I'm always around. I'm literally always on Fox 2 or working to try to make sure that I represent in a way that is dignified and with integrity. Because I know that the eyes of the world, particularly Michigan, are on me. And so I want to make sure that I always handle myself in a respectful and dignified way. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for sharing space with me. Thank you for obviously listening to me. And also thank you for sharing and connecting for those who will stay. And again, no question is dumb. Whatever the question is, I'd rather you get the truth and understanding from me in this time, in this space, so that it'll be yours to share with people that you know and your family. And you go back to your regions and your silos of friendship or workplaces, and that you take the tidbits that you hear here. And I also take tidbits from you all. So thank you for sharing space, and I'm turning it back over to Mark.
Thank you so much, Jeynce. I'm sure we do have plenty of questions for you afterwards. I know I do. We'll move on to our offering now. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values. We'd also like to take this moment to recognize the countless non-financial contributions that keep our congregation going. Each of us contributes to our congregation just by being here. Thank you very much. If you are visiting us for the first time today and you're comfortable doing so, we'd like to take a moment to welcome you. If you'd like to please stand and tell us where you're from and how you heard about us. We'd like to meet you. Anyone new here today? Yes? Oh, terrific. Welcome. All right. The rest of us we know already. All right. Terrific. A perfect heart is one that has known love and loss, joy and sorrow. The perfect heart is one that has been shared. As joys and sorrows of our community are shared, please direct your energy, prayers, and meditations as a gift of compassion and strength. And if you'd like to text a joy and sorrow to me, you can do that at 818-633-0. to our closing words. To laugh is to risk appearing the fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out for another is to risk exposing our true self. To place our ideas, our dreams before the crowd is to risk loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk failure. To live is to risk dying. Okay, folks, that concludes our service for today, but as we mentioned, we have a Q&A afterwards. Is this enough? Yeah, okay, good. We have a Q&A, so I'll invite Jeynce back up to the lectern, and I'll come around with the microphone if any of you have any questions for Jeynce.